Hello horror hounds, welcome to my horror house. Yesterday I went to see Wolfman, and despite it getting some middling reviews, I was really looking forward to it because first and foremost, this is the second stab at reimagining classic Universal monsters at the hands of co-writer director Leigh Whannell. A few years ago he made The Invisible Man, which I thought was fantastic. Wolfman, even though I was pulling for it so much and for a large chunk of the runtime I was thinking, come on, stick the landing, doesn't really work for me in the same way that The Invisible Man did. It's got nothing to do with his skill as a director. I actually think Leigh Whannell is a pretty damn good director who has the potential to be excellent. I would suggest if you haven't seen his film Upgrade, check it out. Know as little as you can going in. It's a wild ride. Unfortunately, Wolfman, which should be a wild ride, just feels muted all the way through. It feels like the final gear is never reached. And I think the problem of that is fundamentally baked into the story that they have decided to tell. We follow Blake, who is a family man. He learns towards the start of the film that his estranged father, has been declared legally dead. So he takes his wife and daughter and decides that they should all go and visit sort of the mountain cabin that he was raised in by his father to clear the old man's stuff out, but at the same time give the family a chance to get away and reconnect. This is following a superb prologue sequence where we see Blake as a child with his father in that location, and there is something in the woods. Naturally, because it's a horror movie, the family get attacked. Blake gets bitten or scratched and infected, and over the course of that night the infection takes hold and he transforms into an animalistic creature. Here's the problem. It's not a werewolf movie. This isn't a Wolfman movie, and I think the title should have been my first clue, as they're two separate words. Wolf, man. This is definitely a movie about infection and disease and how you can see a loved one change before your eyes, which is a great and fascinating idea, and the premise of the movie was sort of sold as this sort of single location house siege type thing, but what if the person you trusted most in the world was beginning to change, and how long could you continue to trust them? And it just, for me, it doesn't work in this Wolfman setting, and I was trying to work out why. And the fundamental reason, I think, is because everything takes place over the course of one night, and very quickly, once the infection sets in, our main character becomes non-verbal. They lose the ability to speak. There are some fascinating camera angles and effects used to transition between point of views, the husband who's changing and the wife, to see how that sort of breakdown in understanding and communication is taking hold and how that works. And I loved that effect, and I was thinking to myself, is this a movie about sort of a breakdown in communications between a couple because they are having their problems at the start? Is it, given the counterpoints between how his father raised him and then we see him 30 years later and how he is choosing to raise his daughter or trying to raise his daughter, but bubbling under the surface there's still some of that hangover from his father's parenting? Is it about traumatic childhood trauma rearing again? Is it about how you're destined to become your parents? It's about such a mishmash of things, whereas The Invisible Man was so laser focused in what it was about that everything that sprung from that seemed to be machine tooled to turn that crank and make it tenser and tenser and tenser. Whereas Wolfman is just a bit of a jumble of everything. And if you want to think about a movie where, okay, let's take David Cronenberg's The Fly, which is about someone who is transforming into something else in front of the eyes of the person who loves them the most in the world. That takes place over an extended period of time, and Seth Brundle is able to articulate what he's thinking and what he's feeling and what's happening to him in a more classical... Well, let's take the Universal movie, The Wolfman, with Lon Chaney. Because the transformation takes place at night, and, you know, sometimes it's tied to the full moon, sometimes it isn't. You have periods, again, where he reverts back to his human form and is able to express disgust, fear, guilt, that he's unable to in wolf mode. So what we have in Wolfman is a film where we have a story about someone changing, told mostly from their perspective, but non-verbally, and that puts an awful lot of weight on the script that the script can't bear, because lots of different things need to happen simultaneously over the course of this night, because the creature that attacked them is still outside. Whilst that is the most palpable threat, I think there are some great tense sort of home under siege sequences. But you have to get your main protagonist far enough along on the infection route that he's strong enough to fight the fully transformed wolf man, the fully transformed infected person. And because he's so far along in the transformation for that to have to make sense, he's gone too far too quickly for any sort of meaningful dialogue between him and his wife to happen. So the film needs a point at which Blake's character stops being protector and starts being the threat, and I don't think it ever reaches it. I, as an audience member, was never sat there thinking, oh, he's now past the point of no return and is now the 100% genuine threat to the family. Meanwhile, because the infection has to run so bloody fast for him to be able to do X, Y, and Z, the reactions of his family to him make absolutely no sense. It's like, are you seeing what we're seeing? He is fucked up, and it is an infection. It's some sort of disease type trajectory. So why are you hanging around him all the time and touching him? It doesn't make sense. You're either afraid of him or you're not. It's so tricky because there are moments in this film which I think are really superb, and some great moments of tension and threat. It never coalesces into something. It seems like still a bunch of ideas that need to be worked out, and ultimately it's not a Wolfman movie. So we have a scenario where still I don't think Universal knows what to do with their roster of classic movies, and I saw a tweet yesterday where someone said, let's just face facts, the classic monsters don't work don't work anymore. It's just nostalgia that makes us love them. And I fundamentally disagree with that. I think you can have your standalone triumphs like The Invisible Man. You're never going to build anything beyond that. You're never really going to build anything beyond this. So at the moment, Universal are sort of tinkering with updated reimaginings of these properties. I think you could do something really interesting with Creature from the Black Lagoon in that regard. Anyway, I'm rambling about the classic monsters now. I never felt like I was watching a Wolfman here. I was watching some infected person become crazed and animalistic. And it didn't hold up, ultimately. I don't think this is a Hall of Famer, which is unfortunate, but there you go.
I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.